Hello, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Just recently did an unboxing, a quick look at some vintage rapidometric Koh-i-Noor pens that I picked up off of eBay a while back. I inked them up with some platinum carbon ink, and now I'm going to sketch with them on some drawing paper. I'm looking at a picture of a Herman Herzog painting, who I've sketched from in the past, Hudson River Valley painter, and we'll play around with these two pens and just see how we like them. It's been a while since I have done a sketching master study using a pen or a pencil in regards to landscape. These guys have a little metal wire inside them, and the little metal wire lifts up and whenever it touches the paper, and that releases some of the ink. These ones have a removable cartridge that you can use an eyedropper to drop ink into. In this case, I used an eyedropper with a carbon ink, and I believe that the ink that's made by the company, I always mispronounce it, the Koh-i-Noor, has an eyedropper on the tube itself, and you can pour it right in. I'm not sure if that ink is light fast or waterproof, but I have heard good things about that ink. These pens, I think they were traditionally used for, let's see, for drafting and design and things like that. And if you look on forums and look them up, you'll see that people will fondly recall using them in college and having to deal with the flow issues and having to dry them off and clean them out. You can use fountain pen ink in them. You don't want to use India ink. You don't want to use India ink in any type of fountain pen. You have a little deer here, so I'm just kind of marking them in just so I can get an idea. Anywho, yeah, so you don't want to use India ink. That'll dry and gunk them up. I think the different models have different levels of air tightness, so the ink that you put inside them would potentially dry at different rates. People that are more familiar with them would probably have a guesstimate time frame in which you should clean out the pen if it's just going to sit there. For example, if you're going to have it sit there for more than 2 weeks, maybe you should clean it out and let it sit. So they still make pens, and they have a few different ones on the market. I think they have one that's like a Rapido Sketch. There's different names, different models. There's another brand, at least one other brand, that puts the kind of stylographs. I think that's what they fall underneath, where it has a little metal piece come up, or maybe refillable technical pen is what you would call it. But I know there's at least one other brand out there. I just don't recall the name. You could find the modern versions on Amazon, Blick, and Jerry's Artorama and other art shops. I wonder if these are out of Germany and where you would find them in Europe. Some other things to add: if you look on Amazon, eBay, you could find a lot of used ones, or in this case, these were new old stock. And the packages were labeled, like the sale packages were labeled 11, but I don't remember how much I picked them up for. I think I got them for less than that. I was cleaning out my desk in the living room and I had found these two packages. I guess I was waiting for a day to ink them and make a video and play around with them. They have different filling mechanisms. In this case, they were kind of a little cartridge that you'd pull off the back if you opened it up and eyedropper your ink into it. There is this one that I had gotten in a trade whenever I traded fountain pens, that fills by twisting the back of it, which is a nice mechanism. I like that on my fountain pens. There are also other brands of kind of the stylographs. There had some vintage antique ones that I had restored a while back that filled like a antique fountain pen where you'd pull the lever, and I had to replace the ink sac inside it. And a lot of them all working at the same premise. I'm just not, off the top of my head, familiar with the different brands. But if you look up repeatographs, stylographs, all those things will come up. Another thing that shows up a lot, or at least I recall whenever I look for these on eBay, is like a 4-lot set or a 10-lot set. It has quite a few in it, and they're still made. I think you could buy the sets brand new or buy them used on eBay, like I said, for probably $20 to $40 for maybe a used one. I'm just kind of guesstimating numbers there. And they have all the different sizes in it. They usually have like a key that you use to remove the tip whenever you're cleaning it. And I think it comes with the different, probably comes with some ink of the brand itself. So there's a lot of options if you're looking to get into it. I think I had mentioned in the previous unboxing is that one of the reasons I got into them, or at least wanted some, was partially whenever I was restoring and learning about the fountain pens and having fun with that, and it kind of just led into it. The different size tips, the fact that they're kind of flexible with what ink you could put into it versus the micron pens, and they could last potentially longer than a micron. I'm sure that when I was younger, I'm sure I've used microns to the point of wearing them out, but I've also read that some people have found out ways or figured out ways to refill micron pens. This is like the size 1, the thicker line, and it is having flow issues. It might simply be because it's such a thick line that so much ink is just coming out at once. And like I said, I mentioned I found them in my living room desk, so when I had ordered them, I probably put them in there. I was waiting for a day like today, and knowing me at this point, I would get a size 1, the thicker line, and then the 0.35, the thinner line, to have the 2 pens to play with as the two tools to go back and forth with. One for the thinner and one for the thicker. So we've talked about the different brands or how you can find them online if you're interested in them. Different places you can find them. The modern reproduction ones, or the modern makes, they're not reproductions, I guess you just call them modern making one. They seem to sell for like 20 to 40, and I think some models might be like more intense and like better quality, I guess, than others. I never put that money down for one. If you were to look on eBay and get used ones, I would look and see if it's working, if they know that it's working or not. I would look online how to clean one prior to getting it to see if it's something that you want to do yourself. And I would also, like in my case, where I found a new old stock, I'd probably go that direction. So either find something you're like, okay, is it working, and get that, or new old stock that would work. I know a lot of people are into fountain pens, or at least I get a lot of ads because I'm into fountain pens. And there's some inks on the market that are good for drawing. Here, this works really good, this one. This is the 0.35. I really like this one. I like the line, I like the way it flows. I think between the two, this is the one that I'd probably wind up using the most throughout a sketch, though I want the other one to be able to dump more ink. I might throw more ink in the other one just to see how that affects it. But I like the mark that it makes, and you can see the variation between the two. Anyway, so I was talking about, let's sketch in the deer, and then I'll get back to chatting in a moment. Let's see. We have the back of the deer towards us with its head coming up. We have this other deer facing here, coming down with its head. I'm just sketching this deer in. Just kind of getting the idea. And once I'm done talking about inks and stuff, we'll see what we can learn from this Herman Herzog study. I think that is the sketch that I want to put in with it. In fact, you'll be able to see the refilling on camera right here. So I'm going to remove this little thing on the end. Try not to get ink everywhere. Yeah, it'd be best if I do it off camera. Let me pause. Alright, so I did not refill it because it had some ink in it, and it was also difficult to remove that little piece on the inside to fill up. It may be because And it was super easy originally to take it off a moment ago and fill it up before I started filming this. So what I'm thinking is that now it has the liquid inside it, maybe some type of vacuum seal was starting to take place. I don't know. If you are a technical pen person, let me know in the comments below if you use them and if you have any tips and tricks. I'm sure some of the older folks have definitely come across them. Anyhow, so I wanted to mention different inks real quick, and then I wanted to get into this sketch. Let's see. Okay, so the platinum carbon ink, for me, that's been my favorite that I've come across. And I had mentioned light fast and waterproof. I like it. And I think we have some videos on the channel painting over it. It might be time lapse, I'm not sure, but I know that I had used it in some videos in the past. The platinum pigmented ink, there's the blue, and that blue is light fast and waterproof from what I've seen. It did the best out of the pigmented series. The pigmented brown and the red from light fastness tests that I've seen other people do online, those two had fading taking place. If you look up platinum pigmented ink, carbon ink light fastness tests, you could probably find them. I don't remember the name of the website that I had seen it on, but I think it was one that was referenced quite often on fountain pen ink pages when that type of discussion came up. Okay. All right, sorry about that. Just gonna make this video even more disjointed and rambly. However, I did get this one apart a lot easier and refilled it with ink. Okay, so I was talking about different types of the fountain pen inks and drawing inks that I am familiar with. So there is the platinum carbon ink that I mentioned, the pigmented blue, the other ones that I felt or I had seen weren't as light fast in this. There is some sort of series that I remember reading about, like a document ink or manuscript ink they had called it. It was a brand, and that I think had light fastness tendencies. There is the iron gall inks. Those might have light fastness properties to it, but I think have some archival issues potentially due to maybe acidity. But that's what they had in fountain pens, I think, in the late 1900s, early, those are the early 1900s, late 1800s. I think the ink had that property all throughout the board, and I think that's one of the reasons why they used gold, because of its ability to hold up to that. So different options. There is the Noodler's inks. There is some controversy around the Noodler's inks recently, more from advertisement standpoint and things like that than the inks themselves. There are inks that he calls bulletproof, and they are pretty much bulletproof, where they are UV resistant, laser proof, etc., etc. And if you look at Noodler's Inc.'s light fastness test online, you can see which ones hold up really well. And there'll be some blacks in there, and there'll be some blues and browns that are pretty good. I think whenever you go with reds, you start having issues with that. And yeah, just trying to give you some ideas and some names out there. Of course, if you have any questions, you can ask them down below. And if I can't find the answer, I can try to guide you in the right direction. So that's kind of a overview, blah blah about ink and about these pens and where you can find them. And while I was sketching and working on this, you can see that I am having some flow issues at some points. And that should just recall back to the fact that I think they're kind of essentially known to have some sort of issues. Okay, so now on to this sketch, this study. Herman Herzog. It's been a while since I've sketched anything from him. There was a while where I was spending quite a bit of time looking at his work. And with master studies, they're a great way to learn. Now, you can sit there. I wonder if it's an air intake issue. With fountain pens, I remember when I was really into them reading about how like some of them were pioneered to allow some air in to let the ink flow better. That probably might be one of the issues with some flow that I'm having. So I had just filled it up. Okay, anyway, so I will try not to talk about the pen anymore unless there's something profound. Anyway, so master studies. I found for me that I could sit and look at a masterwork and appreciate it, but if I actually got down and sketched from it, it forced me to look at it for a way longer time period and learn compositional shapes, how the master put things together, how went about light and shading and mark making. Now, what I'm looking at is an oil painting, and you can kind of get ideas of how the paint was applied with some master studies. You can also try to mimic the different mediums, using different mediums, just kind of playing around. There's a lot of books out on the market that have sketches from the masters. One such book is the Claude Lorraine album. That's from, I think, 1600s to 1700s, Claude Lorraine, who influenced a lot of the landscape painters that came after him, who then influenced a lot more, etc., etc. That has sketches, ink washes, etc. from Claude Lorraine. So I would recommend finding different artists that you like, historical artists, artists on YouTube, artists anywhere, and doing studies of their work and playing around it. That's how people have been learning for generations. And something like this, I know that with my current occupation, being a school teacher, and not having days on end to sit and paint for hours on end, I'm not going to be able to produce a painting of this refinement that Mr. Herzog had done. But I can learn a lot from it still. So even if I was to take 10 minutes, I would learn from it. If I took 20 minutes, I would learn from it. If I took an hour, I would learn from it. So I think that's important. Find something that, even if it looks like you'll never be able to do it, let's just say, the pinnacle, the Mona Lisa. You may look at it, think that it's the best painting in the world. You might say to yourself, I could never replicate that to the refinement that it's at. In fact, there's plenty of stories about Da Vinci carrying that around and working on it just all throughout his life. But there's so much that you can learn just from studying it and sketching it. So that's the really, really important takeaway, especially for those of us that are no longer in the educational setting. Anybody watching this or making it this far into my rambling in this video, you might be somebody who is just no longer in college, who is just picking up a pen and sketching and having fun, or somebody that wants to take on the hobby of art in different forms. So there may be a little uncertainty about how to essentially self-educate or guide your education and your learning. But fortunately, we have tons of access, tons of video, tons of people out there that are more than generous with their knowledge, and hobbyists like you and I can learn and have fun. And you'll often see people say, I don't think I'll ever be a great painter. You often hear people say that, but they'll be happy with what they do. And that is the most important thing. You bring it to powerlifting. You may never be a state champion, but the little growths that you see in yourself are often more than enough to satisfy the hobby, satisfy the desires that you want to achieve. Okay, so now looking at this one, I like the way he has the dark on either side. I think, that's something that I always rely on, is creating the framing effect on either side. I do recall reading quite a bit of text that would say less detail out near the edges, so that the eye doesn't stay into those areas. I think it was often because of emulation of how the eye acts, where you would often focus on something. I think it also plays into a part of getting the viewer to look where you want, so you'd have that darker edges and not stay within it, not a lot of detail in there. And with this one, the lightest part is the waterfall in and of itself. So I'm just using the thinner for the far background. I find that helps create a an easy depth effect, or if you do your thinner lines and marks in the background. Then right in front, right here, we see that it hits almost the darkest points. I think that's a common, relatively common rule of thumb that you'll often hear from artists or in art books, is have your darkest part next to the lightest part in the painting or in the drawing. That's something to experiment with and see if you like that. That being said, this one fits kind of in that 3/4 view where the area of interest, if we were to break it into thirds, sits right along there. So that's interesting that he has that. Coming forward, I do like how his foreground kind of bush right here, essentially, sits against that dark background of that mound. I like the light that catches the peaks. How in here we have light. I'm almost going to gesture with the pen itself to show the spots. And it makes me think that if we were painting, let ourselves get light on the exterior foliage and dark on the interior foliage. Just making simple gestural marks for this background mountain. Proportions and the layout are definitely not perfect and definitely not to speed, but the general idea is there. When sketching, I was talking about the pens themselves and then talking about inks. Really, Percy, you're gonna, I guess both cats are gonna take their turn behind the art desk. But whenever I'm sketching, I try to mark all over the place, and this, I feel, allows me to get a general proportion correct. Let me pause the camera and find out what she's doing. I'm not quite certain what Percy was going after, but definitely one of disjointed videos, and that bell sound just made me think that she has a toy back there. So yeah, so when I sketch, especially a masterwork, I'll try to move around the whole thing in the layout stage so I can get everything somewhat in proportion, and then from there I will try and just move around and build things up. With this lighter tree mass that I have taking place, I'm not liking how it's coming straight up. In fact, his came over and then came in. So breaking up that straight line will be important. Find a simple series of marks are what work for me. Lines, dashes, hook marks. He has his shadow in here. Then we have the lighted area with our deer amongst it. Then we have our foreground come into place. I like how the light, and then it gets darker as we go down into the grass. It makes you want to think, how could I emulate that in watercolor? Oftentimes, maybe mixing whitewash in, um, and then painting over it, putting the opacity to get the light over it, using lemon yellow straight from the tube. Yellow ochre has that opacity that lets you sit on top of it. So it makes you think how you can potentially get those effects in other mediums. How to get it in ink, playing around with it. It also makes me wonder, since I go to the gouache ideas and I think, well, I should lay heavier watercolor on top of the other watercolor. Well, other people might mask that section out and remove the masking fluid and then come back in with a light area. You can also approach it from the standpoint of not doing the wet and wet in the beginning, or maybe selectively wetting areas and doing washes. I'm going to bring this out some, bring this up. You can see how it recedes back, but we break up that recession with the varying heights and objects here, rather than just having a perfect straight line. I'm adding a few elements back here just because of the layout that I have and the size that I went with. But we even have a recession here, but we have the jut out, jut out, jut out, and that breaks up that quick movement. So you don't want that quick eye going to that spot. We have those areas of interest that break it up. Same thing from the other direction. And making these marks behind to bring out those marks that I like. Horizontal marks for the water. We have the reflection of it, and the reflection gets wider as it gets closer to us. So I'm going to try and emulate that. We do have some breaks within. We have the darker areas around the deer. People who do very detailed drawings, especially the ones that use the cross-hatching, etc., really amaze me. You can see the level of dedication to getting those perfectly parallel cross-hatching lines, hash marks, where mine, you'll often see hooks on the end of them. I think part of that might be the whole movement of the hand, or a controlled movement from the wrist, from the shoulder. So if you're somebody who likes drawing, and if you want to really develop that, look into cross-hatching techniques or artists that do that, and see if you want your personal movement in it, if you want to make it perfect lines, how you want that to happen. And then your choice of medium will affect those marks as well. Watching a woman do beautiful portrait sketching, cross-hatching. I think she was using like a gel pen, or like a Uniball type pen, something you get at Walmart for $1 or $2. And she had talked about like some of the skipping issues in the video, you know, and how it was skipping on her. And that might be an effect that you like. You know, kind of like if you look at fonts, they have some fonts that have the serifs. And serifs, I think, when you have that and you have a little flick on the end of the letter, where it has that little pizzazz, or you have very rigid fonts, and that might be up to you. If you look at master sketches, you can see the delicateness of their lines or the harshness of their lines, variation if they're using reed pens. Let's see how we look through here. It's a nice initial sketch. And this is drawing paper. I don't know how it would handle watercolor. The reason I bring that up is how far do I want to take this sketch? Do I want to eventually watercolor on top of it? What more can I learn from it? How dark can I get it? Some other ideas when sketching. It's a lot more time consuming than watercolor. But a little trick that you can do is tape off a border. And taping off that border, if you have masking tape that, you know, you make sure you're not going to tear up your paper. And that masking tape is about 1 inch wide. And let's say we tape this off. I'm just deliberately not going to the edges. I'm not really stressing it. If you tape that off, you're cutting out a lot of area that you have to sketch and put in, and therefore effectively making the area that you're working on smaller. It also makes it look nice and tight and gives it a nice border and an area to sign. I'm gonna see how far we can get these, how dark we can get them. I am enjoying the sketching, and I think that we're going to see more of these pens, and we're going to see more of fountain pens and pen and ink and pencil sketches. As I mentioned, you know, school teacher, we're starting off work. Thursday is the first day with the kids back. Summer was spent doing a lot of portrait practice. Earlier today I worked on a self-portrait in Conte. And that took a while, but it was a lot of fun. There's a lot that I can still like be my own critic about, and I still am, but I know that I'm definitely growing with that. But that being said, with the change in season, changing to your work starting, I know that there's going to be more watercolor happening and other mediums. I haven't done much photography, but I've mentioned that in Louisiana we at this point have rain every day and sporadic storms, and I really just haven't been outside much. Unfortunately, haven't been exercising much because of that. They do make a longboard that is waterproof, but I don't know if I want to spend the money on that. And the last time I got caught out in the rain, I disassembled everything completely. I didn't take apart the bearings, I just sprayed them down. And I had taken the trucks apart, taken everything out. It's funny, in Louisiana, along the Gulf, you could say 15% chance of rain, and then you could just get just a ginormous thunderstorm. To talk about the platinum carbon ink, you get an idea of the depth and the darkness that it dries to. I think Higgins makes a fountain pen ink. They might call it like fountain pen ink, but an Indian ink for fountain pens. So you might want to look into that. Maybe a comparison of the darks. But I'm not sure. I just never tried it out or really looked at it that much. I did mention Noodler's having a variety of light-fast inks, but they do have some slight waterproof issues where if you'd wet them, there'd be a little bit of lifting, so it'd muddy it some. There's the Noodler's, I think that's just called Black, and the Noodler's Heart of Darkness. I think there's also Moccasin. They'll have kind of different properties to it. Someone did comment and say that if you mix Noodler's Black with the Lexington Gray, I think it might be more light fast or waterproof, sorry. But the Lexington Gray in and of itself is a very nice ink. I haven't used that in so long though. Try to explore a lot of different things on this channel and in my everyday life. I think a lot of it is that I realized that it can be done, you know, where you think to yourself, if you want to sketch in these, the repeatographs, repeatometers, we have a fog coming in over here. Let me see if there's anything I can do sky-wise. Blab. You know, with a little bit of YouTube searching and, you know, looking at the cleaning process, learning a little bit about the pens, seeing the prices, seeing if it was a commitment that I wanted to make. I think I told you guys this was less than 10 per pen, so you could find them for cheap. Did I want to commit the time to cleaning? Did I want to commit the money to it? Is it something that I wanted to play around with and explore and learn, etc.? So you ask yourself all these things. It's interesting seeing how it skips, and I kind of like that effect. Yeah, so ask yourself all those questions before you get into something. But, you know, realize that hundreds, thousands of people do it, have done it, and that if you put your mind to it, you can do it. I'm thinking, due to just the pen and the tedium of trying to get this dark, I might just stop it at this point. I do think that if I was to continue with it, there'd be more to learn. There might be the concept of diminishing returns, meaning that as more time is put into it, you're learning less and less. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not sure if that's at what point that happens. If I do anything after a master or anybody, I write my name and I write who it's after. I hope you enjoyed, and I will be back with more. Of course, we could take ink and wash over it and play around with like that. But I'm not sure how this paper would handle that. It's a kind of lightweight paper. What size is this? 95 pound, but I don't think there's any cotton or anything in it, so maybe we'll come back to it. Let me know. So I hope you all enjoyed. Y'all have a great day, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Take care.